What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency Podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. This episode is brought to you by Virtual Intelligence, your premier partner for client-facing and back-office virtual employees. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York, and I'm joined by our co-host today, the one and only, you already know, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of Sound Harbor Insurance in Long Island, New York. Not quite like Salt Lake City, but close enough, Sean. Close enough.
Dude,
down in Long Island.
the views in Utah, man. I went on a family trip a few years back. Beautiful time. I think what was the name? Park City. What's the?
Yeah, Park City.
Park City. Yeah. My wife and I had
Park City.
Pre-kids. A good edible store nearby. It was good times.
I never believed you about the kids conversation, but now I believe you. For kids. Yeah, for kids. All right, let's jump right into it. Colton Hunter, super excited, owner of Proficio Insurance Services. Colton is a member of the Scratch Agency community. We've had a lot of good conversation on there, but this is my first time being able to sit down with him, so excited to learn along with everybody. Colton, how you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here. What's it like in Salt Lake today? Just tell us all about it.
It's hot. It's hot today. But Utah, anybody that's been here, the weather's bipolar. So, I mean, it could be raining later this afternoon, you know. But no, it is beautiful here. And more people are moving here because of it. So it's getting a lot more packed than when I originally, grew up here. So.
Sure. So you're born and raised there?
Yeah, born and raised here. And then I moved away for some years when I did some door-to-door sales and then came back and appreciated it a lot more after I saw some other parts of the country, for sure. So.
Door-to-door sales. We're going to get into that. I'm writing that down. All right. Tell us about Colton Hunter. Tell us your story. How'd you get into this beautiful industry? Let's start with all that, and then we'll jump into everything else.
Yeah. So, I was born and raised here in Salt Lake City, Utah. When I was 19, I went and did door-to-door sales for about 4.5 years. And how I got into insurance actually is I worked with a door-to-door sales company. I won't mention any names, but they sold you on like the residual aspect. Oh, you can get a piece of every account you sell. Well, long story short, that was not the case. It was kind of like a rope and dope. Anybody that's been in the door-to-door industry, unfortunately there's very few companies that are straight shooters. So after kind of that, I got, was set on the residual game and kind of looked at some things that I could get into that pay that way. That way I can work really, really hard when I'm younger and hopefully just be golfing when I'm older. But got into that, worked as a State Farm team member for about 2 years, and then got the opportunity to go independent. Actually opened an independent agency it was beginning of 2020. And that was with 2 business partners at the time. And then about 2.5, close to 3 years, I kind of sold my ownership there, went out on my own and did the whole thing again from scratch. So I've done the Scratch Agents thing twice, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody really, but wouldn't change it for the world either, So
yeah. I think doing this all over again, it sounds a lot of fun. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think Sierra did it 3 times, right? Didn't Sierra do it 3 times?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So, hopefully this is the last time I've got to do it, because I don't know if my wife would be too pumped if we did it again,
Yeah, so, I don't want to relive that conversation either. I hear you, man.
No.
All right, so tell us, man, how did so let's talk about the most recent agency that you're in now. You said you started that one in technically 22, 23?
So it would have been the end of 22. So by the time I got all my appointments, it was basically the beginning of 2023.
Cool,
yeah.
Cool. And how was it, carrier access wise and stuff? Were you like, because you had the relationships and stuff, were you able to get?
Yeah. So most of the carriers, I was able to get set up, and I guess I shouldn't say that, but I had the relationships with most of the carriers. Like Nationwide, for example, they locked stuff down like right around that time, so I just got them like within the last 6 months. But for the most part, and then Safeco took a little longer as well, just because they were locked down. But other than that, I had the relationships. And before I kind of went out on my own, I talked to the carrier reps and was like, hey, if I go out, do this on my own, like what are the chances I get an appointment? Yeah. So I have all the appointments that I had other than Allstate, which they don't do that anymore for the brokers, right? So it was that part was fairly smooth given the market at the time. Like I said, there's a couple stragglers that took a little while longer, but if I didn't do had that relationships at the first agency, I don't think that it would have been as easy to get those appointments.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what was the game? Like you opened the agency, what was the game plan from like a growth standpoint? Did you have like a certain type of way you were going to prospect? Was it door knocking? Was it cold call? Like what was kind of like?
Yeah, no, I actually tried door knocking when I was at State Farm. It doesn't work that well for insurance, at least for me, it didn't. But no, so I had I always have kept my like X dates and things like that, and had a lot of relationships with loan officers. Did pretty well in some of like the local Facebook groups. So luckily that's one thing that I haven't struggled with. In the very beginning at the old agency, it was obviously a bit of a struggle to get that all going, but a lot of it transferred over pretty nice. I obviously couldn't touch my clients for X amount of time. So it was basically those relationships. And then in the Facebook groups, I get a lot of people that refer me or tag me when people are posting in those groups, just because I was pretty heavy in them during COVID when we launched that first agency. But yeah, we're mainly personal lines, I would say probably 85-90% personal lines. And then now, luckily, I'm fortunate enough that most of, if not all, my business comes from some type of referral, whether it's client referrals or, loan officer referrals, B&I as well. I've had some pretty good success with this year specifically. So, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Steven, I feel like I feel like if there's one trend, listen, everybody's agency, we know the deal by now. Everyone does it completely different. But one thing I've heard of so many times now with the personal lines focused agencies is that I would say a majority of them are like pretty heavily involved in local Facebook groups. Like I feel like we've heard that so many times now. Colton, what kind of groups are you in on Facebook? Is it like mom and dad's groups? Is it like chambers? What kind of groups is it?
Yeah, so there's a big one here in Utah called Connect Utah, and that one, unfortunately, it's kind of been saturated. But when I get ones from that, it's more from my clients being in it, and they'll tag me. And then when you get tagged, when you're the one that gets tagged multiple times, you usually get the quote. But it hasn't been as successful. But even like there was some yard sale groups for the longest time. I would just do like a simple post in it, like, hey, who feels like they're overpaying for insurance, or which everybody does, right? Yeah. So that would flood, that hasn't been working as much just because it's been saturated. So, but yeah, it's the Connect Utah. I want to say it's actually a business owners group. There's obviously people in it that aren't business owners. It's grown a ton, but that would be the one that most of it comes from. And then, yeah, there's little, like all the little sub-cities have their own yard sale group. Nice. So, and that's kind of where it's gone from there. Yeah.
With doing the scratch thing twice, talk us through your thought process and experience of the second time around, of things you maybe did different the first time that you learned or wanted to do different in the second time around. Talk to us about those developing stages of the business at that point.
Yeah. So, right off the bat, I got a VA like when I opened this agency, like as soon as I could, where at the other agency, it wasn't until probably a year and a half in. So I got a VA pretty quick in, I want to say probably 5 months in, as soon as I felt like I could breathe a little bit, which is a huge help, to just offboarding the stuff that just takes time. One thing that we didn't do at the last agency, that I did do here is have a VA that does all my quotes. I didn't figure that in until probably about a year in. The VA that I originally had kind of just did your, hey, call the carrier, find this stuff out, scrub the sites. Before I found like Adapt API would, pull all the pending cancellation reports. Just super time consuming work. Just getting that off my plate so I can focus on revenue generating things, whether it's relationships or actually, talking to the clients, delivering the quotes, following up, and selling policies. But I would say that's the biggest thing is, offboarding, that tedious work. So that way you can focus on stuff that you're best at.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about this in the last episode we just recorded too, and how you can have 10 agencies with 10 VAs and they're going to do things 10 different ways. you talked about quoting. What's worked from you of having success with VAs, right? Because I feel like there's two people on either side of the aisle. Is like the VA works really well or the VA doesn't work. And from the conversations we've at least had on the podcast, the VAs doesn't work is they're not putting enough time, right? They're not putting enough time in the onboarding and making and onboarding them to the way that Colton's agency works, the way that Sean's agency works, because it's going to be two different ways, right? What have you found in success with that onboarding and taking, like you said, everybody can say, well, I want to focus on revenue generating activities, but it's one thing to actually do it and offload that other stuff. Like, what have you found that's worked well for you in that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a learning curve for me. I'm still trying to figure it out completely, right? But I would say treat them as if they're a team member that's in the office. At the old agency, we went through a VA firm, I guess, if you will, like virtual intelligences, I believe, right? And we kind of thought it was just going to be a plug and play. And that was definitely not the case. So once we kind of figure that out, whether you get them through like a staffing agency, hire them directly, whatever that may be, just treat them as a teammate, as if they're in the office, as if they're a licensed person. At the end of the day, they're still people, right? So they're going to need the same type of attention that anybody else is. I still struggle a bit. There's still time almost every week where I'm doing stuff where I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, I need to get this off, right? But I would say that's the biggest thing is just, treat them as any other team member. Do your one-to-ones with them, onboarding. Don't just think it's going to be a plug and play situation. When we did it through the staffing firm, that's how we felt. And then I have my VAs are actually direct, which pros and cons, right? Just like with anything. And I think that's when it kind of clicked. So even if I do get it through like a staffing company again, which I'll need more VAs in the future, obviously, but I think just treating them as a team member, not just thinking that you can just set it and forget it and just hope that they do well.
Yeah,
seems like such a, it just seems like such a, oh, of course, but nobody, I'm like almost every time I've had a conversation where people are like, oh, it doesn't work, that's the root cause. It's like, oh, well, I gave them the document that shows them what they do. Why aren't they doing it? Oh, it didn't work out. Okay. But like I don't know.
Just to add to that, and I wrote this down, Colton, I think that's a great piece you touched on, is like, and where I see, just from talking to other agents, where I see like the biggest mistake is it's usually like one of two things. Either A, you haven't painted like a clear picture of what their actual roles and responsibilities are, and there's no process or spot checking in place. And then the second part of that is you're doing the complete opposite. You're just like completely overwhelming them and having them do, personal lines cancel lists and certificates of insurance for commercial clients and, these 17 other, doing commission reconciliation. Like it gets to a point where you give them too many different things. They can't be a master at all of it. And that's, on our last pod, we kind of talked about this a little bit, and where I think the issue with any scratch agent is like that first person generally becomes a jack of all trades just because that's what needs to happen to kind of push to the next level. But I don't think over the long run that makes the most sense to do. And we kind of talked about that, like, hey, you should have, like a personal lines focused versus a commercial lines focused versus maybe an admin specific focused person. Like, I think that's a conversation we actually don't have too much T5 that I think is important to talk about, is like, you also don't want to overwhelm them to the point where they're just like mediocre at best at 100
everything instead of efficient
at everything. Yeah. No, absolutely. One of my VAs, I mean, all he does, and it's kind of just that specialization, right? All he does is, and I actually am in the process of, I unfortunately had to let a VA go, but bringing another one on. But the one that I currently have at this point, all he does is quotes, right? So he can get, it's requotes and then new business quotes. And there's obviously small tweaks on how to do those, with with requotes, we have all the information, where new business, ideally I try to gather it every time, but which Risk Advisor has been a huge help on that. But That way he can just get really good at that specific task, versus, like you said, throwing 30 things at him and hope that he can master all of them, right? Because even, we're forced to kind of wear every hat, but it's not, as we grow, like, it's best to offboard, certain things and then just kind of narrow down what you're focusing on. And I think that just applies to anybody, not just the owner, right?
And from the quoting
get
perspective,
really good at a couple things.
Initially, so I have the same setup, Colton. I have one VA that all that VA does is quote. They do nothing else but quote personal lines. And when I initially did it, I was kind of like, man, is there going to be like enough for them to do? But then when you think about it, like, I guess it depends on your market. Like, just for home, there's 10 carriers we got to sometimes plug the information into. Then, 3 or 4 for auto. Then maybe 5 or 6 for private flood and, FEMA plan. So it's like that person. And then like they send an end of day report to us through our team's messaging platform. And I'm like, sometimes it's 20 plus quotes a day, so it's, I think you can have plenty of work for them to do if you had them just doing quoting, depending on the makeup of your agency,
Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, I was spending, my goal's always been when I'm prospecting or anything on the personal line side, get 4 new people to quote each day. Right. And once I was able to offboard that, days that I've, it's been more and more where I'm not prospecting as much, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Right. But it's allowed me that instead of spending 3 hours doing those quotes or however long it takes, offboarding that, frees you up to go out and get more people to bring in the door. So kind of like passing that stuff off makes it where you can generate more work for them to do.
Yep.
I just want to end. I want to end that topic with one point that just popped in my mind. And if anybody's heard Billy Wagner speak at any conferences or anything, I've heard him a few times. Like, he's a master of the process and procedures, and that's how he's built such a great agency. Like he says, like, day one, we have the people learn how to scan in a file, and we do it 100 times. And you could, like, by the 5th file, you're going to probably think, oh, they're fine. They know what they're doing. But like, no, we do it like, and that's the process. Like, you learn how to quote in this carrier 10 times until we look at it and audit and all that. And I think that's sometimes the hardest part, because like we can get so excited about a new hire and be like, all right, I'm going to offboard this all. I'm going to offboard it all. Okay, you know how you got your login, like, this looks easy. It seems easy to you. Okay, let's go next. But then it bites us in the ass in the next 6 weeks, down the road, when I forget what do I click on this one? And like, that's the challenge. And Colton, you said, I'm still figuring out. We're always going to figure it out. They're always going to try to figure, because it's always changing, and you're always adapting when you bring a new team member on, of moving responsibilities around or auditing processes or all that. It's always going to be changing. But I'll never forget that, of, like you said, I start with 100 scans into the computer. If you think about that,
I love that.
It's such a basic thing, but it's obviously something you have to know how to do. Right. And if you do it 100 times, you're damn well going to know how to do it.
Yeah, I literally just
reps with anything you do is how you master it, right?
That's a great point. I literally just brought on my 18-year-old cousin yesterday, and all I have her doing is uploading stuff into our CRM. That's it. And good point, Stephen. I'll just have her do it 100 times, and then I'll move her to the next task.
There you go.
But there you go. Colton, what's the makeup of the agency look like now? It's a VA, plans to add more people?
So I mean, it's myself. I've got a licensed CSR. Which I brought her on February, March. So she's, still green to insurance, but she's, every day being able to kind of help, move things forward without me having to help, which is fantastic. And then I have the one VA that does the quotes, but I'll be getting, replacing the VA that I unfortunately had to let go here shortly. So it'll essentially be 2 VAs, the one CSR. And then my plans are September, October, bring on a couple salespeople. We just moved offices, so I've got a room in the back that we just got 3 new desks for that are looking to fill later this year. Fill them up. Yeah. So I'm going to hire 2 at a time is the plan, because that way they can kind of feed off each other, and
talk to us about
the way turnover is. So I actually, when I was at State Farm, the agent that I worked for, he always actually hired in groups of 3. It kind of gives competition. You can kind of, learn off each other's mistakes. And then at the same time, I mean, with any sales job, there's going to be some turnover, right? So his thought process was hire 3, 1 will stick. And that's exactly what happened with my group. The other 2 weeded out, I stuck. And then he, kind of would rinse and repeat. So I'm not going to quite do 3, I don't want to bite off that financial chunk, but I think 2 would be good. And then, they can kind of, that way they're, learning together. And they're not just competing against somebody that like myself, right, that's been doing it for 7, 8 years, because sometimes, if it's anything like myself, I get pretty competitive, and whether it's like sports or anything, you kind of sometimes compare yourself, and sometimes it's not a exact fair comparison, where if somebody's been doing something for 10 years versus you just getting into it, it's, you want to beat the guy, but it's also kind of demotivating. So that's kind of my thought behind it is, bringing on those 2. Hopefully they both stick, and then we'll do it again. But chances are at least 1 will fall out, just like with any sales job. I feel like there's turnover. So,
It's funny. We've heard this a couple of times, Sean, the last couple of weeks of this group hiring. I love the idea. Just if you can talk more about just the plan of how, and with the team that you have now, you got the VA doing the quoting, you got the licensed CSR. Like, are you planning to try to find people with experience, not experience, and train them up together? Like, what's the plan around that?
Yeah. So, and this is something as well that the State Farm agent that I worked for kind of theory was. So I like the idea of them having experience in that role, but being green to insurance. Just that way there's no bad habits as far as insurance or, things like that. So, yeah. So for the salespeople, ideally sales experience, that's not going to be like a deal breaker. If I find somebody that, feels a good fit on the bus, if you will, I'll give them a shot for sure. But ideal is sales experience, no insurance experience. And same thing goes. I mean, if a killer comes through the door that I think is going to be a great fit and they happen to have insurance background, it's not like I'm going to turn them away. But that's kind of the thought is, bring them on with sales experience, kind of teach them the ropes of insurance, the way that we do it. So that way there's not bad habits attached.
Yeah. Yeah. There's 100% something to the competitiveness and like the success of a producer. It's so funny. Like my producer and I got dinner the other night, and I'm a lot more in personal line sales now, and just like him and I have such a good process laid out, and we're both writing a ton of business every month now of like following the system that we have in place that's working really.
Yeah.
And we use Agency Zoom as our CRM, and I looked at him because I see like it shows the 2 producers in my and it's like, and
confetti pops up and you're like, oh, he got me.
He like catches up and we're like going back and forth.
Yeah. It makes it fun too,
Yeah, and I'm like,
everybody's making more money, but at the same time, it's fun to beat out your peers in friendly competition.
For sure. So we're like at dinner and I'm like, hey man, can you see like the amount of revenue that like I'm generating on a monthly basis, like an Agency Zoom? And he's like, yeah, dude, I look at it every day. He's like, I'm trying to kick your ass. And then we just had like a good conversation about like just trying to beat each other out for, the rest of the month. I think there 100% is, and I'm looking at it more now like, oh, I got to beat Ryan and vice versa.
Yeah, but the goal is as an agency owner, if you can get guys on board that beat you out, then that's an ideal. It's a win-win. It's like I hate losing, but that was a good hire,
Sure. So, but I'm saying that's like I feel like that's such a good trait for anybody in sales to have, is that competitive nature, and I think that's why people with a sports background like Tamron, Louis Gazatua, Brett's brother Taylor, like they all have a sports background. They're all super competitive, and they do well in business and in sales. One thing I wanted to ask you, Colton, you said you had 2 VAs, right? One that does all the quoting. What is some of the tasks that the other one does?
Well, I'm down to one right now, but the one that I'm replacing, which is going to be here shortly. I mean, she does a lot of like I read Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time, right? So, which I think you actually recommended it. And like the email management. So she was doing that. She would do calls to carriers. So like if there was like, hey, call this carrier and see if they'll do this, and that, or hey, what's going on with this bill? Sometimes, I mean, it was even as, and I even feel messed up saying it, but I would have them just wait on hold and say, hey, when you get somebody, transfer them to me, like just stuff like that. And, and I say it's messed up just because I hate waiting on hold so much. So to like make somebody else do it's kind of like, but it's just something that is big help. And then she, started getting to managing my calendar, but so just a lot of like, calling the carriers, following up,
stuff,
just like, and then she would do tagging in agency Zoom. So like our renewal process has tagging. So like if it's over X amount threshold, it gets tagged above and then moves to the next column if it's below. Like, so just like stuff like that, where it's, stuff that takes time, but isn't like super, super like in depth on like having to learn it. It's more just time consuming stuff.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I like the idea of having two, one for the quoting, one for the more administrative tasks. And I think that's like the path that I'm kind of on right now with like my cousin. I have the one VA doing the quoting, and then my cousin's going to do more of the administrative stuff, helping with the emails and whatnot. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. Well, at first, the VA that I hired, about 4 or 5 months in starting this agency, she would do, around 6, and that's why I did it at 5 months, is some of our auto policies are 6 months. Yeah. She would do some of the renewal quotes, and then I tried to have her do the new business, and then it would be like, hey, this isn't happening, what's going on? And I learned pretty quick, like, I threw way too much at her, and it was like, hey, I'm trying to get these quotes done. That's why I haven't called this carrier. Oh, I was on hold with this carrier for 30 minutes. That's why I haven't done these quotes. So that's at that point when I brought on that other one. It's probably right around a year, and probably about 8 months after that other one's when I brought on the other and was just like, hey, you're going to do quotes. And I check in with him every once in a while because that's like my worst nightmare is just doing data entry all day. But he seems to somewhat enjoy it. So
yeah, one of the things,
good on him.
One of the things to stay on this subject real quick, because I think it's helpful. One of the things that I think is super helpful that it took me a really long time to learn is like we understand the aspect of time blocking, right? But I think it's important that we also explain that to our virtual employee, whatever you want to call them. Because like, for instance, if there's any repetitive task you have, so like we do like a weekly cancellation report every Tuesday, and then Wednesday on the team meeting, we'll touch up anything on that report. And what you said, Colton, was happening to me with that report when somebody else was working on it. And then I had to be like, okay, wait, hold on. I said, listen, every Tuesday at 9:00, don't do anything else for that hour except the cancellation report. Just every Tuesday, 9 to 10, put it on your calendar every week. That's what you're doing. So it's not like they're randomly trying to do it towards the end of the day because they had a busy day and now they're missing other stuff because they're doing this last second. So I think it is important to train that virtual employee to time block.
Yeah, and even the CSR, I mean, that's something I have my CSR do is she does renewal reviews, and I tell her, hey, block it during this time. If I need to answer the phone during that time or whatever, like, concentrate on just doing that, because it's easy to have something come through and then you stop where you're at. And not only is it hard to like shift energy, that's where mistakes can be made too, is if you're in the middle of something halfway and then don't remember exactly where you left off. So I think it's the time blockings, and that's one thing I think, like, Steven said earlier about, figuring it out. That's one thing I'm still trying to figure out. And I think it'll be an ongoing thing. I do the time blocking, but I, put myself in the hot seat. I need to be way better at like respecting those time blocks more versus just like letting stuff kind of bleed over, because it makes a huge difference when you do.
You both just teed me up perfectly. Thank you very much. You were both just in my head there for a minute.
Anytime.
Sean and I just did a solo episode. I don't even think it's out yet. Maybe it is about just the day in the lives of both of us.
I actually listened to it when I was on the bike this morning.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
But it was just a last minute idea of like, hey, let's just kind of share this, because I think, and I think Sean, we should start asking every guest about it, because it was so different from Sean and I. And the time blocking is the key. But Colton, share with us, and especially because we're all kind of in the same boat. I started in 2022, team of 3. Sean's similar. He's older than both of us, but he's the old man, but he's still there. share with us, like, what's the day in the life, and tie that into like the perfect day. Like, what does that look like for you? What has worked really well? What do you want to focus on more to get more productive in your days? Because I think that'd be interesting for some of the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, day in the life. I mean, I always start out, I wake up fairly early. It sounds like both of you guys do. I get up at 4:30, get my workouts done, and then kind of come back to the house. I don't have kids, but we walk the dogs every morning, heat up breakfast. We meal prep our food, so it makes it somewhat easy. Heat up breakfast and then get to the office. Ideal day, I will lead with that because sometimes, like I said, it bleeds. Is
Sure.
Get my stuff that respond to emails, text, stuff like that kind of off the plate in the beginning. And then if there's any service work where my CSR is starting to be able to take more and more, but there's still some stuff that I'm taking on, get that stuff out of the way. And then I would say spend a couple hours, 2-3 hours prospecting, or at least following up on those quotes. And then I really would like I do my BNI on Tuesdays. But I would like to fit in more networking, like in-person networking and things like that a couple times, sprinkled through the week. I would say that would be ideal, but I would like to get it to a point where 70% of my time is spent either networking or, trying to sell people insurance, whether that's following up on quotes, delivering quotes, whatever that is.
What's that morning, again, in the perfect world, what's that morning prospecting time look like for you?
So right now, I mean, I've been fortunate enough that a lot of referrals are coming in. So it's a lot of following up on X dates is kind of what my prospecting is. I don't do, it's been a while since I've done the cold calls or purchase leads, but we have Agency Zoom. It sounds like both of you guys use the same system, where if I don't sell somebody now, I'll cycle it right before their renewal next time. A lot of it's automated, as far as like text, emails. So it's just that call, which you'd be surprised how many times people, which I'm sure you guys experience, they get 6 texts from you and 4 emails, and then you call and they just pick up like they haven't been getting your your text and emails, But I would say just, calling those X dates and then following up on stuff that I've quoted, delivered, and the ball's in the client's court, which I'm sure you guys realize as well, that sometimes people are right on that fence, if you will, and they just need a little push over the fence to convert to a client. I wish it was you send a quote and they all come, every single one of them comes back to you and they want to buy, but I would say that would be kind of the ideal situation for that prospecting / follow-up time.
Yeah. I just think that, to your point, nobody has dialed in perfectly, but it's
No.
I like that 70%. If I can get 70% of it to work, that's gonna be a good day. Because it is, especially in our positions as owners of the agencies, like you're pulled in a million different directions, and not all of those can wait, right? And I think I like that a lot. The 70%. That's what I'm gonna shoot for. I like it.
Yeah, I think 70%. I would like it to be 90, but I think 70% is realistic, So
yeah. Very good.
Yep.
All right, we got to wrap this up. Yeah, Colton, it was great meeting you. Appreciate you taking the time to join us and share your experiences. That's what this is all about. Where can people just follow along on your journey or connect with you? If it's something you said, what's a good place to get in touch?
I would say either in the community. That's probably where, I'm not very active on social media, which is something I need to get better at. But, Facebook, LinkedIn, I've got that and I have it, but I don't post very much. And then in the community, and also just want to thank both of you guys for putting it together. I mean, it's been a huge help to me. I've had multiple times, like Don just last week. It was actually the day he surprised you with lunch. Like he hopped on a call and just spent time when he was driving, just sharing his knowledge. And it's just a huge help hearing other people's, we're all in it. And then just hearing other people's point of views has just been huge. And that's one thing that I've had this time around at this agency that I did not have at the last one, which has made a world of a difference. So, so I just want to thank you guys for that. But I would say Facebook and LinkedIn are the best bets of, connecting with me.
Awesome. Thanks again for taking the time to join us. If you're wondering about the community, maybe you're listening for the first time, go to scratchagencypodcast.com, click join the community. It's a free group community. We got about 85 different agency owners in there now. A big orange button on the top says join the community. It's a Telegram. Check that out. Thank you again for joining us, and do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. But most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.